No, I already got it out.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to rock right now.
Oh, America! Are you serious? It is showtime, baby! Here we go! Grand Jam Slam!
360 Mindset, sharing skills and thrills wrapped by stories from elite performers and your favorite sports pro. So take your first step. Speak your first word with a foundation of positive thought that comes from 360 Mindset and your host, Coach Whiteman. Whoa, Whiteman. Let's get started. No excuses and no regrets.
Absolutely. It's Friday morning at 11 o'clock or thereabouts. Depends on what clock you look at, I guess. Good morning, everybody. This is Lowell White, your host of 360 Mindset Performance Talk on KUHSdenver.com. I am so excited because we're going to talk about a subject that wraps everything that I do and what I say to almost every client I work with. And the word that references this is coaching. Yes, coaching. We're going to talk about coaching, the courage to be a coach, and what it means to be there as a trusted person for someone, young or old, to be a good coach and play with work with your players and influence them in ways that it could be life lasting. I mean, it could be a memory that will be with you forever and ever and comes back to you at the times you least expect it. Like for me, last week, actually, no, earlier this week, I forgot when my birthday was. I got great birthday wishes, and please, I'm going to send a shout out. Give me a moment here to say thank you to all the people out there that sent me best wishes through texts and Facebook and all the different multimedia things that we use nowadays. I really appreciate those best wishes. I also want to say a particular thank you to one of the ball players that played ball for me back in Chicago, and he came to me at a time when he was struggling for a vision and a mission for himself, and yet he was a good ball player, and at the time he really knew he was a good ball player. Mr. Sotomayor back there in Wisconsin now is where he lives with his family. He's working, contributing to the community. He has 2 great kids, 2 I think, maybe 3, not for sure. So maybe you can call me and let me know for sure. But he sent me just a wonderful video. He looked so grown up and mature. I guess you have to be mature. Or you don't have to be, but you should be mature when you have kids. But in following him over the years through his professional career after high school and college, it really warms my heart not only to get those messages on my birthday, but to hear about how successful he's made himself, along with many of his teammates. I'm not going to exclude them. So with this introduction to today's theme, coaching with courage, and I think it takes courage to be a coach, as I posted on Facebook as an intro to today's show, coaches will influence the lives of their players for years, maybe a lifetime of influence on the individuals that are their players and on the teams that they coach. There are many examples around the country, around the world, where coaches have influence. Major teams in the professional ranks promote coaching in their own way. This week, I believe, or for sure this season, the NFL is celebrating 10 years of Play 60. It's a program that interacts with the community and is themed around the game. So in this week, week 3, and then in week 4, they're going to continue their celebration, their 10-year celebration. Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL football, said this, and I'll have to read it. I'll quote it. It says, "For the past decade, NFL Play 60 has been an important tool in ensuring that youth get the recommended amount of daily physical activity. It's important that young fans understand the benefits of exercise and have the resources to build a foundation for a lifetime of good health." So said NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. Now, I know that health is a great outcome from coaching, but many times people who get into coaching get into it for different reasons. They get in it for winning. They get in it for perhaps for the game and winning. But with the NFL and their program of Play 60, every franchise has their own schedule of what they're going to do with the Play 60 program during weeks 3 and 4. And I'll quickly go down to the Denver Broncos real quickly here. Scrolling down, there's the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos will be working with, on October 1st, the Broncos will host members from the Boys and Girls Club of Metro Denver on field for pregame tribute. Then the honorees of Play 60 that will be selected based on their leadership and commitment to Play 60 Challenge. The state ambassador will be there with Fuel Up to Play 60 schools will join the kids on the field to highlight the collaborative commitment to health. And then let's see, Gatorade, the challenge by hosting Gatorade Junior training camps at the 2 Boys and Girls Clubs in Metro Denver, located, or they'll be doing things on the, let's see, they did things on the 12th and 13th of September, and then on October 9th, and then they're going to have the shootout on October 9th to finish up the program in week 4. So that's going to happen all over the country with the NFL. And I'm sure those young people that have participated in Play 60 have had great coaches, great mentors. Hopefully some of those mentors were their parents and family to guide them through how football has made an impression on them, and the coaches that were part of that with them. And I'm going to talk about some of the things that kids are influenced by with regards to coaching in just a second, but I'm going to continue to set this up. Excuse me. Let fall dust and drying out even more. We have the low humidity in Colorado, but the fall seems to bring a little bit more. So we're going to talk about who is a coach, what is the definition of a coach, the different ways the term coach is used to define a set of activities that they put around the word coaching. So we're going to talk about what to avoid, what kind of language to avoid, physical contact, the areas of harassment, and we're gonna look at that in some detail. I'm hoping you're gonna send me some tweets at Coach LKW. Hold on just a second. Got another cough coming. Oh, don't you just love that? I share my headset with nobody else but me. So coaching is important to me. I've been a coach myself for many years. I work with coaches. I train them by using feedback from players as to strategies they can use as a coach to be better at getting the most out of the player. And I think for me right there, what I just said is where coaching needs to anchor itself. Player-centered. Look at the player, understand the player in a way that you're trying to help them be their best. So with that being said, let's get into our first segment on mindset and talk about, when you hear the word coach, what do you see? What image does that bring up to you? Like today, I got my hat on, got my coach's shirt on. I won't stand up, but I got my coach's shorts on. And today, special thing for me, my PF Flyers. Because as a player, when I was a first player, as a very small player, I had PF Flyers. Run fast, jump higher, PF Flyers. But that being said, I want you to also ask yourself, where do you see coaches? And is that coach that you see and what they look like, are they a person you trust? And then as you think about that, give me your answers to this question. What's a coach's primary task? What are they supposed to do? How do they measure what they're doing to get results? Is it just the scoreboard? Is it just the one-loss record? How should coaches be evaluated? Because I'm sure you've had a memory of some coach that you followed and really appreciated. Maybe they were even your coach. And as you followed them, they were caught up into some kind of organizational issue, be it pro, college, high school, what have you, and they were let go. They were released. Maybe it was because the organization thought, we need some changes around here. We need to make changes. Well, then was it because of the coach? So how does a coach get fairly evaluated? Should there be standards, minimum standards? We're going to talk a little bit about the training areas places you can go get training at the state level for high schools and middle schools. Coaches have to be certified. They've got to pass a test. Now, I'm going to be straight up with you. That test, the head coach has a copy of it that he gives the answers to his staff. So how valid is that test? Should it be such that they can take a test with the answers and not really be accountable for the way they answer it? Now, we can debate that. We're not going to debate that today, but that's part of the world that coaches live in because they want to coach. They want to remove the obstacles and get to coaching. Now we're going to talk more about the attitude and personality. I hesitate to say character because there's so much about character out in the world of athletics, but I don't know what it really means to a lot of people when you say things like trust, integrity, resiliency, mental toughness. Those are words that describe intangibles, and coaches usually say after the end of a big game, it was the intangibles that got us there. All right, we just wrapped our brain around the intangibles and it brought us through to the win. And it sounds like the win was more important than the intangibles, because if you ask the coach or anybody around them, can you tell me how you train those intangibles, coach? How do you get to the depth of what that intangible means to that player? And where do you see it measured on the field? Can you measure mental toughness on the field, coach? Now, I've got my own answers to those questions, and some of them are yes, because that's what I do. I study that stuff. I study the movement, the thinking process. How is thinking manifested in a player on the field, on the sidelines, amongst their peers, amongst their teammates, so that we can get a handle on how to reinforce the positives. So when we look at mindset of a coach, I think it's got to include where they get trained to create a mindset. At the high school level, there's a group called the National Federation of High Schools. And for most states, they use their framework of knowledge to test coaches. In addition to that form of testing, and they may have other tests, but to get certified for most coaches around the country in every state, they're going to use some form of an NFHS test. In addition to that, they're going to use a first aid test, because the other part of coaching is to create an environment that's safe. Now, not every environment do you control. In fact, in many cases, you don't control it at all. What you can control is the outcomes that happen, and then whatever that result is, you'd have to deal with it. So if a player gets hurt, cut, bruised, broken bones, concussions, whatever the case may be, that first aid test, I'm hoping the coaches take that seriously. And they get that part of their character, their mindset wrapped around how does the environment need to be presented so that it's as safe as possible and we can manage the consequences that come out of that contest. Like, for example, big contests, big arenas, lots of fans, lots of people on the sidelines. We better have a first aid that's not just the coach, but a coach that's informed with a mindset then that he knows how to stop play or call a timeout to get control of the environment, bring the ambulance in or bring the trainers in, have a contract with a training company. Look, I don't mean to concern anybody, but I'll tell you what, parents, make sure you're involved in asking head coaches about those services. That's a mindset a coach has to have on the safety area, that the school is responsible for putting those services in place to wrap ankles, take care of bumps and bruises after games and practices, to be present during a game, to make sure that they are there as a support to the coach's mindset and what they know about first aid, and they can then call upon those trainers to get engaged with their players during a contest. Now, the size, urgency grows as size grows. The competition of the game will also create those situations where you're going to call upon those things to be used. But I think a big part of the coach's character is their training and the knowledge they have about two key components. Who are my players and how do I evaluate them? And safety, which involves the environment. Guess what? We haven't even got to the third element, which is the X's and O's. Now, the training that you get on X's and O's isn't necessarily from a focused National Federation of High Schools or a first aid program. It's experience, who you worked for before. Maybe you played. And that was where you got your experience. Well, I also should tell you that there are now formal places to get educated on being a coach. Strategically, offense, defense. If it's football, it's all three elements: special teams, offense, defense. If it's basketball, it's offense, defense, and the arena itself, and the drills and the skills and how to develop those skills. You can go to college for that. Well, right here in Colorado, Denver University is one of the premier sports performance and sports coaching educational centers. I have, in fact, inquired to many of the professors there on various occasions about issues that I have regarding my interaction with my coaches or my interaction with players. My profession in being, as I study my doctoral studies, I study behavior. Now, I'm not saying that every coach needs to get a PhD, but with your experience and constantly starving for knowledge, your mindset grows. It needs to grow. It needs to be challenged. Here's the first big reason why. Every season, you got a new crop of people. You got a new stack of talent. You can't be static. One of the best things that for me as a coach was being considered the underdog on the competitive floor, because I knew that I was trying to get the best out of every kid. Now, he may not look like the best basketball player. He may not even move like the best basketball player. But whatever skills he had or she had, I made sure they came out. And they were confident about those skills. And that their teammates were back behind them, anchoring up the things they weren't so good at. So we truly played like a team. And on some occasions, we, the underdogs, we won on the scoreboard, but more importantly, we won on the process of being a team, of being the best I can be for me first, and knowing how I can push my teammates to be their best, and that they know because I freely and transparently shared with them, man, I need your help with this. I need you to remind me to breathe when I come up to the foul line. So I got a good shooting rhythm when I go up to shoot the ball, because I'm not very good at it. It really unnerves me. Those are examples of how coaches can not only manage their environment, but show the players how to participate in that environment at their best to the best of their ability. So that comes to my question I asked a minute ago. So what is the coach's primary task? And is it just a sports coach? Because look at, we say the name coach, the word coach. Is it executive coaching? Sports coaching? Is it, I don't know, coaching anything? Does it get a different tag? Or is coaching just one word that everybody should consider the fundamentals of being a coach? As one of my wife in particular says to me, manage the expectations. So if you have expectations of a coach at a coaches meeting that you went to, as many high schools, colleges do, I'm sure that the parents get less involved at the pro level because they're grown-ups now. Sometimes they act like kids. But at the high school and college level, coaches will still have meetings that they include parents at the beginning of the season. That's where you have a chance to ask questions to manage your expectations of what the coach has committed to you. So that hopefully with your involvement in manage expectations based on what you've been told, you can hold coaches accountable. And especially if they put things in words on paper to say, this is what we do. We have a handbook, player's handbook. Anytime I coached in high school, whatever the sport was, I always had a handbook because I wanted the parents to reinforce certain behaviors at home. I wanted the parents to know this is the kind of expectation I have of my players, and I'll manage those expectations, as should the players participate in managing my expectations for them. So that way, we don't have any finger pointing. I don't have to finger point and say, well, you didn't tell me that. Or the players say, well, coach, you didn't tell me that. Or coach, you did tell me that, and I'm holding you accountable to that. I'm just doing what you said you're going to do for me. So manage your expectations is another mindset that coaches need to have when they're communicating and defining their role to moms and dads, the community, administration, sponsors perhaps, and at the pro level, the college level, those coaches, those head coaches and staff coaches become more focused on managing an environment that goes far beyond the playing surface, especially at the college head coaching level. and the pro head coaching level. You're less involved in the X's and O's than your staff are. At the college level, you still may play with the X's and O's and strategizing, but it's less drawing them out and more strategic and tactical based on who you're playing. So coaches have a mindset, depending on their level, that is going to change as time goes on. But the basic skills, the basic mindset of a coach and what their primary task is to be player-centered. Player-centered. That way, when you have all those other forces working on you, if you come back to the player and say to yourself, am I honoring what the player's expectations are of me? Have I got anything or anybody I need to talk to about the expectations I have for them? Player-centered, I think, is the key place where our mindset needs to anchor itself so that we have the ability to not only define who we are as coaches, but we have the ability to walk on a path that's clearly marked. The turning points, the stop signs, the go signs, so that we can make sure that we're on task. Now, as I say that, we're getting close to our first break. That's really a break. I never break. I'm a talking guy here. But we're going to pause a minute on the mindset as we shift into skills. And I'm going to ask you to think about, again, especially in this product or this topic, the product I'm going to talk to you about is the RMP on my website. The RMP tab on 360mindset.com. Please go there and check that out. Because as a coach, if you want to be understood, you have to understand yourself and what your desires are, what your focused desires, and what are your not so focused desires, so that you can have a coaching staff that supports those desires that aren't as strong as others. The RMP 16 allows you to do that. It's a measurement for you to understand, to what degree do I believe I'm a team player? To what degree am I curious about my world, so I can formulate this environment that's safe for my players and coaches? I'm going to give you some examples of some organizations that are supporting that kind of mindset of using data, using resources to help coaches identify who they are and how they can move forward in a very productive and positive way. And one of those is with a colleague and friend of mine, Jim Thompson, out at Stanford University in California. And he created a few years back an organization called Positive Coaching Alliance, or known as PCA. And we have a Denver chapter here in Colorado. It's actually called the Colorado chapter, so it takes into consideration all the towns in Colorado, whereas across the country, PCA might have a Chicago chapter, and then they're hoping that DeKalb will get involved, or Champaign will get involved, or they'll have a Des Moines chapter, and they hope that Iowa City and Council Bluffs will get their chapters. But in Colorado, we have the Denver region, or the Denver chapter. And Jim Thompson dedicated himself because he was a father of an athlete, and at one point coached his kids, as I have, as many of us have. And we were wondering about, how do we do it right? How do we not only treat my kid the right way and get the best out of them, but how do I treat the other kids? Now, Jim Thompson, unlike me, I got into it right away. I didn't watch to have other people coach my kids. Well, with the exception of my daughter, I couldn't be in two places at the same time. But he had a bad experience. He didn't like what the coach was doing. He didn't like the coach's desires were more for him and not centered on the player, and filling what Jim calls the emotional bank. As Stephen Covey, one of my mentors, it's the emotional bank account. Putting in positives. Now, there are going to be negative drawbacks, withdrawals from the bank account, but as long as your positive balance is always positive, or your balance is always positive, you know you're constantly thinking about what's the right thing to do for your player. So I encourage you to go to positivecoach.org. Check that out. Check out the Denver PCA, or Positive Coaching Alliance, here in Colorado. I think the directors and executive directors of that, we're going to try to get on the show in the not too distant future. Because this is the season. Lots of teams, lots of programs are starting up because school's back on track. A lot of coaching going on. But remember, every season's a little different. So moms and dads, coaches, know you're going to have new resources, new bodies on the team to challenge you to discover those differences so that you can adapt and adjust what you're doing on the X's and O's to accommodate bringing out the best in every player. And I hope you'll check out 360mindset.com and our RMP tab for that assessment tool. All right. The next segment is the skills segment. And it's going to be an expansion of the expectations. So what do you expect from a coach or a mentor? Are they the same if it's a sports coach versus an executive coach versus, a midwife coach? What do you expect of them, just in general terms? And I think that here's the list. I will start the list, and the list will probably grow of certain expectations that are trainable, coachable skills, like being a communicator. Got to communicate, and not just in the verbal sense. Coaching tends to be thought of as pretty much a verbal skill. It is, but you've got to be, especially at the middle school, high school level, you're going to be sending out pamphlets, notifications of practices, practice schedules. Every practice, there was a schedule in multiple places that the players would go by that they would have to see it. So no player had an excuse about not knowing what was going on. It had to happen. So you need to have written and verbal skills as coaches, as a good one. And quite honestly, I think another one is push your creative button. Be creative. Here's an example of creative. We were in a playoff. My son's team in baseball back in the day was in a playoff game. And we were doing pretty well. We were confident. We were scoring runs, playing defense, being good competitors to the other team. But then all of a sudden, I look over at the opponent's dugout, and the coach has a rubber chicken, a naked rubber chicken, meaning there's no feathers, naked rubber chicken, swinging it around over his head. How do you compete with that? I mean, this is serious business. Coaching, standing in the dugout, third baseline, calling signals. Serious stuff. Because it's 10-year-olds. It's serious. He's rolling a rubber chicken. All of a sudden, the kids are laughing. They're having fun. They're scoring runs. Now I start getting more serious. Next thing I know, he's got an arrow going through his head. I'm at a loss. I have none of that in my bag of tricks. I have strategies on 3x5 cards. I have a lineup that I'll change in given situations to defensive protect or offensive pickup. I don't know what to do with an arrow through my head. It's amazing. We won by 1 run. At one point, we were ahead by 7. That's a coach who knew his kids and knew how to connect with his kids. He didn't talk about batting stance. He didn't talk about get your glove down, other hand up, or any kind of technical thing that the kids were wondering, Coach, what are you talking about? I'm out here playing. Don't talk to me right now. He got them into the fun zone. I learned such a great lesson from that. Such a great lesson. And speaking of the fun zone, segue here if you don't mind, I'm wearing my LA Dodgers hat. Now, the only reason I have an LA Dodgers hat on today is because the LA Dodgers are coming in for the last of the 3 games for the Rockies season next weekend, Friday through Sunday. And the Dodgers are coming in. They've got a great record. I think still the best record in baseball at this time. The Rockies look to be able to clinch a playoff berth, but I'm telling you, the baseball from now till then is going to be great because they play the Diamondbacks. I think they're playing the Giants today. It's going to be some great baseball for Rockies fans all the rest of the next 2 weeks. And for me, with the Dodgers coming in, I work with the Dodger. I've worked with him since he was 14. Curtis Granderson, he's been on the show. Hopefully he'll be on the show when he comes in Thursday night. We'll get him on the show Friday morning because it's a 6:10 game. He won't have to be at the field until about 3:30. So keep your fingers crossed for Curtis Granderson to be on the show next Friday on KUHSdenver.com with 360 Mindset Performance Talk. Looking forward to it. Great, great kid. He'll be right next to me in this chair if we make that happen. Okay, and it's fun. He puts fun in the bill of his hat. Every single game is right there for him to look at because that's what's got him where he's at right now. And that's why he was one of the big reasons, in addition to his skill, that he was picked to be traded to come over to the Dodgers. And I wish him so much goodwill for the rest of this season and hope that he gets that elusive World Series ring for himself. He's been in 3 World Series. 3! Well, that is a good segue to continue talking about skill. Because the next thing we want to talk about is honesty. We want an honest coach. In your communications, tell the truth. You're going to have tough situation coaches with players that, how do you tell a player you're cut? Be honest with them. Kids are resilient. They need to know what they need to do. Here's an example for you. I had a young man who tried out for a team in Chicago, a Catholic school where we played basketball, and we didn't have a lot of population for talent. Young man loves the game of basketball, just loves it. Said, Coach, can I try out? Now, the first thing, if I was a coach who wasn't trying to understand the player, I would have looked at him and went, man, you're too short. You don't run very fast. You showed me your ball handling skills, not marginal at best, and layups is probably your best shot, if you can get one. Now, if I would have judged him on those kind of assumptions, I would have said, no, son, it's really not you. I don't want you to get hurt. His name was Eric, or is Eric. And I said, Eric, yes, you come out and try out. Now, the other thing you need to know is Eric was a savant. What means he was really, really good at certain topics in school, but he wasn't an idiot savant. He was an idiot savant. There were only certain topics he really excelled at. Everything else he struggled at. So in certain things, now math and numbers, he was really, really good at. And he talked about it all the time. And the kids knew it. The kids knew Eric was a little different. But boy, when they played with him in practice for the tryouts, they really wanted to help him get better. So we got to the end of the tryouts, and he did not succeed. He knew it because he got the chance to participate and see where he had to work harder at. And he said, Coach, I went to tell him, and he said, Coach, I know I didn't make the team, but I really love basketball. I said, Eric, how about this? Why don't you be the #1 fan? We need the #1 fan on our team. And I tell you what, I will provide for you the opportunity to be a manager so you can be even closer to the team and participate that way. You couldn't see a bigger smile. Eric became our manager. The books, our stats were unbelievable. So he found a way, with us understanding him, how to participate on the team and contribute to a sport he loved. So skills, many times, honesty for coaches is huge. Yeah, the skill of X's and O's is important. You need to know that to be able to differentiate yourself from other coaches as a strategist. And yes, the kids need to know that as well. But it's got to be blended. It can't overweigh the other parts of this list of skills. I think high integrity is huge. We hear too many stories that become newsworthy because a coach has done something behaviorally that's not acceptable, and they get it's not a high integrous action on their part, and that's regretful. It's regretful for the participants, the players in the sport. We hear it about it all the time. Heck, there was on HBO. I don't know if it's HBO, but on the web and the internet, on cable. I'll get it right here in a minute. About dancing. The lady that was the dance diva coach, instructor. Flip that word around. That she was still a coach, but she sensationalized her show for audience and berated these girls. And yet, that was a common theme in dancing across the country. I will bet you there are young women and young men that have had to suffer so much pain and anguish, both physically and emotionally, as a dancer, just to get recognized in a studio. Because, open calls, for example, for dancers, huge. How do you differentiate yourself? I guess you have to be sensational, both physically and emotionally. But that takes a toll on people. And coaches, dancing coaches, could abuse that and maybe have abused that. I know for sure on that cable show, she seemed to be abusive to me. And I think she's now gotten herself into some trouble with the law as a result of it. So character, huge component. So the skill there goes back to your mindset. Also being a role model. I don't promote where I played, how I played, what levels I played at. If somebody asks me, I tell them so I can show them, hey, I know what I'm doing. That's a little start into role modeling. Here's the last one that's kind of tough, especially for men coaches, is the maturity factor. I've got some young guys that I coached over the years, and they are now coaches. And I get reports back to them about, hey, coach, it was great what you did for me as a player and showed me these things. I'm extending that, I'm passing that forward to someone else. That really, really warms my heart that I've influenced not only the person that I coached, but the coach who is the person, and help them to be better in what they're doing. And that's the skills level. Now we could go through lots of iterations of skills and get really detailed about them. But I think the thing I want you to take away from the skills side is that it blends to the mindset. The mindset should be the thing that asks you questions about what more do I need? Where can I go get this? I mentioned Denver University. You can get a coaching, you can get a master's in coaching, you can get a PhD in coaching if you want, in sports coaching. There's also Positive Coaching Alliance, the National Federation of High Schools. Those are places where resources exist to help the coaches improve who they are as coaches and provide tools for them to understand who plays for them, who participates for them in whatever the sport or the activity is. And I say activity because dance is in there, theater's in there, drama's in there. CHASA, the Colorado State Association for High School Athletics and Activities. It's not just sports. There are people very committed to drama, very committed to academic groups, DECA and FBLA. All of these activities are things that need to be monitored because coaches have to handle the groups. So there's this next segment we're going to get into mental conditioning here in a minute, because that's going to be important, that helps coaches identify what in the environment needs to be both present and not existing in the environment to help the outcomes, the energy of the environment support the behavior of the kids. And I shouldn't just say kids, the players and the participants. So I'm going to, in this next little break, as I call them, is ask you to think about giving me a call. Go to my website, give me an email through my website, or go to Twitter and ask me to get a hold of you. And let's do a consult so that we can talk about the coaching and how you can take this initiative to be your better coach. So I'm also a resource to the colleges, to the organizations, the associations, and not-for-profits that are out there to support coaches to help you. Let me give you NFHS's website. It's nfhs.org for you to go take a look at what they can supply you, but also take a look at my website and look at the stuff I've got on there. I've got some great videos on there. They don't cost you a thing. You've got the Time to Focus app that also can help both you to focus your attention as well as recommending it to your players. And then I've got resources on the website like the RMP16 to help you, and some different handouts on the website as well, and some book recommendations. But I'd love to talk to you. Seek me out. I don't charge anything for the first 30 minutes of a consult, and then we can discover where we can go from there, if at all, or maybe just a contact, almost like a pen pal kind of thing. Just stay in touch. So the mental conditioning part of this. I want to talk about the environment from a safety perspective, especially in the area of sports that have been identified as sources for brain trauma. And we've had guests on here before that have talked about field surfaces and how we can improve field surfaces. I've had a guest on here that manufactures headgear to help kids in the non-contact aspect of their games, but because they can still fall down, they can still bump heads. And so like 7-on-7 with football, or small group practices with soccer, those kind of activities, they should be wearing headgear. They should be wearing some form of shoulder and chest protector. It's not full pads, but if you're gonna minimize the contact, but you're still gonna have it run at full speed, at game speed, as football calls it, play fast, there's a chance people are gonna bump heads without being protected. They're not wearing their helmets. So I want to talk a little bit about that mental conditioning aspect. Well, what do we do about that? Well, one of the things we've talked about that for players, and I'm going to say this to you coaches, when you go into an arena, I'm sure you've been there before. It's on your schedule. It's your conference opponents. but they may change things. Walk the fields. Take a look at what's going on around the goalposts or the end zones of the basketball courts or around the nets in soccer or hockey or whatever it is, and make sure that things are secure. Or tell your goalies to take a look at these things. If there's anything that's loose, make sure you let us know, and the facility should get it fixed so that it's a properly equipped facility. Don't just go through the drill. Take advantage of it, be accountable for it, and be a leader, both as a player and a coach. So coaches, help your players to understand what you expect, manage your expectations with regard to safety in the environment, so that if an incident happens and there's a concussion or the potential for a concussion, let's make sure that we have protocols that all the coaches know about and that you identify with them. Hey, okay, we're at an away game. Where's the trainers for the away game host? Let's make sure we know where those are at in case things go wrong, so on and so forth. Do they have ice available for us? Because I didn't bring it. All those little things should be on checklists that maybe you as a head coach don't do, but you initiate someone to take charge of that. That's a mental condition, your checklists. And you make sure your players are understanding. I know with hockey, for example, the nets, many times you want to check those out. You want to check along the rails at your, that's not your dugout, but where the players are, your bench. Make sure that you take a look at that, because those benches, they got guys, the line shifts and skates going across them and stuff. All kinds of things can happen. And look, it's a reality. We don't always go to the best equipped arenas because money it's tight, and in many cases facilities get the last nickel, if at all. So let's make sure that we take care of it. We can engage people to be creative and make some things happen. What are some other things that are mentally conditioning? Well, as a baseball coach, and now recently, this just last Sunday, the Broncos, they took almost an hour, if not more than an hour, off for lightning because of the weather. So there's a mental condition about the environment that has nothing to do with the surface, the playing surface. It has to do with what's around you. And making sure that you are aware of these things, making sure of what happened, like check the weather before you go. If you're playing baseball, softball, soccer, football, and take advantage of that. Also, fans, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but you may not look at the news like I do, but there have been stories, regretfully, in Texas where a parent was upset with the officials and came down to the field with their licensed, but nonetheless, their firearm, and was waving it around. I don't know if they were intending to do anything with it, but my dad always taught me, if you pull it out, you better intend to shoot it. One would think that they were intending to shoot the umpire because of bad calls. Well, you don't want that to happen. So one of the mental conditioning components is being aware of your fan base, being aware of where you're going and the opposing team's fan base, and have discussions with the coaches about, hey, how do we handle this? In many cases, at the high school level or middle school level, it's athletic directors and teachers that get rotational assignments to that. As coaches, do you know that? Is that part of your mental conditioning, part of your preparation to set up a mindset so that you can implement your skills and condition yourself for those kinds of things to happen? Another piece to look at, the officials. Make sure that you have a good conversation with the officials. In most cases, this is rote kind of stuff. You have those meetings at center court or at the 50-yard line, and or even in the locker rooms at college level. They come into the locker room and they talk to you about various things. You want to say something to them. Mental conditioning is the differentiating piece of whether you go up from high school to college or college to pros, because it has a lot of administrative pieces involved with it. The other part of this that I don't think a lot of coaches look at, it can be considered an intangible, but it's the teammates. Are you mentally prepared and conditioned yourself in understanding who your players are, that you know about the interactions and have prepared those interactions with team meetings and conversations about differences of kids? Too often, things like free and reduced lunch facts come out, and a player gets kidded and jibed about that. That's not right. That's not fair. But if we don't know about it, or if we do know about it, we don't address it from a team standpoint, you're going to inherit the lack of team play and perhaps a little bit of selfish play on the parts of others who have been the source of that kind of criticism and critical thinking that has begun to grow in your team. So teammates, preseason stuff, condition that so it fits in the environment you want, the kinds of things. Another part of the mental conditioning thing are posters and banners. I would encourage you not to let the pep squad, the spirit league, the booster club be in control of your banners and your posters. Have a mission and visioning session. Doesn't have to take a lot, but ask your players, what do you want to accomplish here? What attitude are we? Who and what do we represent in our character that we want to put on a poster and a banner? That will set up mental conditions for your team. That once you set them up early, like voting in Chicago, set them up early and often. So the message is there. With my college and pro athletes, I make sure that they help. They don't always are good at it, but I work on it. Make sure their locker is their temple. They have their mantras in there, their slogans, their words that create images and visions. These are all tools to mentally condition themselves so it becomes habit forming. But that locker becomes a practice zone. They can go in there and look. They can say the mantras and meditate. They can breathe. They can do all the kinds of things that are necessary to get them into that place that's important for you as a coach to count on them delivering what you've helped them condition themselves into, that solid player, and they're comfortable and confident in doing that. Hey, it's a great day today, coaching, talking about coaching and the nuances of it. And, we're going to, in this last piece, when we get to performance results, we're going to talk about the not so nice pieces that cause me to get even more excited about talking to coaches about the components we talk about on 360 Mindset Performance Talk, which are the mindset, the skills, the mental conditioning, and then ultimately those process results, the performance results that you want to get out of processing your participants, your athletes through the sport that you're, an activity you're participating in. And we'll get to that in a minute. But I want to bring up some other examples in the mental conditioning piece that are important to me. I like gadgets and stuff, and I take a little backpack with me to the practices I participate in. When I was a coach, I had them in my coach's office, and I'd use all kinds of little tools and gadgets and gadgets. And I think it goes back to the guy with the rubber chicken and the arrow through his head. It helped me to realize how important it is to have fun. And at the same time, I've also learned there's a discipline to the fun. That sometimes when challenges get really tough, coaches, you have to be the one to say no. You've got to be mentally conditioned to step up and say, no, this is not the time to have the locker or we have the bench or the dugout out of control. We're having too much fun. Ratchet it down. Here's a key situation. We've got 2 outs. We're down by 1 run. We got a man on first and third. And the count on the batter with 2 outs is 2-2. Where's it going to go? What's our call? The dugout needs to be properly in place mentally. Their condition needs to be mentally in a good place to promote and understand that situation and hope that we'll get the results we want with the call the coaches make for that situation. And to do that, it takes a lot of evaluation and care with the game that we play. I know with basketball, the NCAA had a great slogan a few years back, and I think they still reference it every once in a while, is honor the game. It still may be there because I think they honor the game every year when they talk about cancer. And the coaches wear their tennis shoes with their suits, and they honor and represent their support of cancer and cancer patients and the fight against cancer. But find something in your mental conditioning process that you can foundationally lock your players into concretely and honor who they are first. As I said earlier, if you are player-centered, all of the things I'm talking about now and many more layers of understanding of that process will help you to deal with every issue, any issue that might come up with your team and your players. In fact, I'm hoping you're going to find out that the players will step up for you and help you to understand. I had the show we did in Houston with 2 players that I coached were Donnell Alexander. He honestly and truthfully shared with me that when he was in the sessions and the team team meetings when I was presenting, he said, I really didn't get it. I was there because I was told to be there. And as it got closer and closer to me leaving school, I started to get more and more of it. But then it was too late after I left. I really got it. I really understood what you're talking about. So as coaches, remember, you may have a loss on the scoreboard in the win column or the loss column, but it will come back to you because of what Donnell said to me. He figured it out. You were an influence. It didn't happen right away. So I want to talk about process when we come into the performance results last segment of our day today. We're here at 360 Mindset Performance Talk on the wonderful KUHSdenver.com. I am so glad I'm here today. There's a game this weekend. Colorado, well, there's a lot of games this weekend, but Colorado football plays UW to open up the Pac-12 season. According to Paul Platty, the SID, the Sports Information Director there, it is a key game. A key game. It's one game. No one game is key, but Paul, that's what he said to me. That's almost a quote from Paul to me. And I had asked Paul for some credentials, and to respect him and to honor him, he's right. I waited too long. I didn't get my credentials. I was not mentally conditioned. I did not manage my expectations. In fact, I was way off because I didn't have any knowledge. Well, interestingly enough, coaches, that's not an excuse because you're the coach. You're the person the kids and the players, the participants are relying on to be there for them. So when you set an expectation, and especially if it's for yourself, you better have your facts right. And I didn't. So before we get into performance results, I want to make that point to you all out there is to have a training program for yourself, guys. Talked about National Federation of High Schools, Positive Coaching Alliance. Go to my website. Go to a lot of websites. Start understanding who you are and what you need for training to fit into those areas that are deficient for you. And we're not perfect. And I would hope you don't act as such and put yourself into a situation that is compromising to you and the program that you're involved in. So once again, we're here on a Friday. It's a great Friday. Good things happening this weekend all across the sports. Baseball is coming to an end. Some great couple of weeks here of baseball, Major League Baseball. And then you've got fall programs across the country at the college level starting up, as well as high school. A lot of the competitive high schools have fall ball programs as well. And there's going to be a lot of emotions with all this energy and all these activities. Moms and dads are like chauffeurs driving around. I'm wondering if Uber has changed their rules. I bet you they're getting lobbied by parents to, hey, let me put my kid in your car so I can go with my other kids to another event because it can only be in one place at one time. I do not envy moms and dads who are transporting their kids all over to these different events. But that's a result. That's a performance result that coaches need to be aware of. It's not their performance result. It's moms and dads. So coaches, be very clear to your parents. Be very clear to your administrators about tardiness, being late. What are the consequences of a player not being there on time? Now, I know in college, you got your locker room, you got your field, it's however distance it is from the locker room to the field of play. You don't have an excuse then. And if you are late then, there should be some dire consequences. But in high school and middle school, moms and dads there's multiple kids in the family, and they've got lots of things that have to happen perfectly every day to make sure that they deliver the kids on time. So that's a performance outcome you need to be aware of, coaches, so that when you go and look back at your managing expectations in that mental conditioning area, help mom and dad out with that a little bit. But I also want to emphasize in this section of performance results, it's process, process, process. Coaches, you will get great results if you are player focused and you ask them to focus on the process to get the best outcomes, because every player is different. Make sure you understand who those players are so that you can manage your performance outcomes that you want through processes, which means your drills, your techniques, X's and O's understanding. So with that, you're creating what equals what the equivalency of the process is that you're preparing them, and then you're getting them into practice so that you have a performance outcome that encourages them and that you can illustrate to them. The more that you can show your participation with an outcome you want through a process, the greater connection that player or participant's going to have to what you want them to do, because not every kid understands every word that's coming out of my mouth. As I'm sure, I don't know if it was a movie or what it was, but do you understand what's coming out of my mouth, kind of thing. I've used that line countless times, somewhat tongue in cheek, and sometimes I'm trying to find out, are you listening? As Donnell had professed to me, he was listening halfway because he didn't understand, and that was my fault too. I need checks and balances, coaches. Create a process in your own technique that allows for you to pause a minute, like I'm going to do now, to ask questions. And you may not be a very curious coach. You may be just my way or the highway. This is what it's got to be. Well, if that's the extreme you play, you're going to miss out on a lot of great feedback to help not only yourself, but the players connect and really hook into it. I can't tell you how many times I've discovered such great talent in players by just asking them questions and then sculpting what I say to fit how they understand it. Some kids need demonstrations. Some kids need a more lengthy verbal conversation with very specific terms. So vocabulary can be an issue. So at the high school and college level, interact with educators. Go to professors. Talk to them about, how is my player learning in your class? At the college level, the information we created in high school doesn't go with them. So you may not be aware of learning deficiencies or special needs they might have that don't transfer from the classroom to the playing surface. So you're out there with a kid who needs visual indicators, visual triggers to understand the words that be coming out of your mouth. So if you don't investigate that, you're not going to get the performance results you expect. Coaches, especially dads and moms that get into coaching, I'm not saying you shouldn't. I coached as a dad, and I learned very quickly. What I did in the past has nothing to do with what we're doing right now. It's the kid. It's the player center, the participant center. If you're interested in their best interest and bringing the best out of them and the skills they have, you're going to do great. But the minute you step over that line and start talking about how you had to walk 5 miles in the snow to go to school, and how, if you're going to play basketball, you played on, dirt and grass and gravel, and I became a better ball handler, because they don't care. They just, it turns off. They just numb it down, nod their heads. The best time I've had with players from around the country when I work with college and pro athletes is when they come from a different part of the country, and they're really respectful. Sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. That becomes a defense mechanism. If they don't understand something, yes, sir. Yes, sir. They actually have a face. They give you a face. So coaches, performance outcomes may be camouflaged. You think they understand, and then you don't get results. And then you get confused because what you thought you got as a result was all they could give you. It's not. They just haven't been understanding what you're trying to tell them. But because they went, yes, sir, yes, sir, over and over and over again, that was a camouflage. It sounds like they understand. They give you this verbal response that indicates on a superficial basis, oh, he understood. He said yes, sir, didn't he? No. Got to ask questions. Got to take that off the table. Back in the day, it was my bad was the thing they did. My bad. I said, don't do that to me. You tell me, I'll never do that again, coach. And then I'm going to ask you to explain what you're never going to do again. So now we got this dialogue. We got this Q&A going. And I understand, coaches, you're going to say, it takes too much time. Well, I tell you what, either you do it then, like a dog pissing on the rug, if you don't go put their nose in it right away, they didn't learn anything. Because if you wait after you clean it up, what good is that? You got to get it right then and there. And make sure it's emphasized specifically in terms that the player can understand so that you can get the prescribed performance results that you want. Well, we're coming close to the end of the show today. I'm glad you're here. It's been a great Friday. Coaching, man, coaching is awesome. But let me just, not a downer, we're going to finish on a positive, but let me just make sure we're really well aware of what coaching has faced over the years. The good coaches have got to have faced some of the behaviors of coaches that weren't so good. Coaches that were in it for themselves. And they pushed the participant, the athlete around, embarrassed them, humiliated them. And they could get by with it because the player, the participant, thought that this is what it was supposed to be like. I have to work hard. I'll take the humiliation to learn more because this coach has been told to me as being so high up on the scale of things. So there are some things that we have to avoid as positive coaches, and that's falling into that trap where our past becomes something of an asset for the future of those athletes. Don't let that diminish who they are. The other thing is we have coaches that have taken advantage of players and participants in a way that was physical or emotional. And that those kind of behaviors are lasting in a negative way. We have to be open about that. So when you look at your environment, coaches, and you examine your environment, examine those places that are darkened and shadowed. And make sure you put light on there so that if you have a girls basketball team or a softball team, whether you're a female or a male coach, be aware of areas, physical areas that could be areas that players could get caught in and physically mishandled and abused. We don't need that. Also, have rules and guidelines in your performance outcomes. If you want to have great, honest actions and behaviors with your players, then say to them, we will always have another coach with you. I will never be here alone. Now, in many cases, the administration at the high school and junior high levels, they already have those rules in place. But if you're properly mentally conditioned as a coach and you go to a new place, check it out, walk it down. Maybe even in the interviewing process, check it out. Be part of an organization that is philosophically aligned with where you're at. Man, is it coming through? Am I passionate about coaching? Absolutely. But coaching is not just on an athletic basis. And the principles we've talked about this morning, as we come up to the noon hour and are signing off here at KUHS Denver, it's also in executive coaching. The same rules happen. They don't happen as fast. They linger and they fester. And then all of a sudden, it manifests itself after the hurt and anguish has already been felt by those in the office place. Human resource professionals do their best to set up strategies and parameters to do that. But in my world, I assess it. I go into cultures using my coaching experiences, my team experiences in athletics and activities to examine our workplace, because that's a team. That's a place where people are interacting and sharing and getting to know one another, sometimes more familiar and more intimate than anything that happens in the sports world. But in both cases, they happen. We need to know the signs of those negatives, because coaching is a great, great profession. It's rewarding. It influences so many people. As the thing I posted on Facebook says, I will influence people their whole life, and I won't even be there. It's what I've done as a coach with the intent of being someone who is player-focused, that wants the best for them and tries to give them the best to get that out of them. Hey, I'm glad I'm here. This is KUHSdenver.com. I am Lowell Whiteman, your host of 360 Mindset Performance Talk. And as it always happens, you got to take control of yourself and you have to breathe. You have to breathe and feel good about yourself every day. So as we say goodbye, I'll let my favorite song from those boys that I've coached in the past take it away for you. Breathe, and wish you the best on a Friday. Watch your football, college and pros. The Broncos will be playing this weekend. Glad to be with you. Thanks, Henry. Have a great day today.
So leave it all behind. Just like the boat out on the water.
Good to have you with me, International.
The wind will blow you back to me.
Doesn't matter where you're at. Coaching applies no matter where you are at.
No matter what I'm doing.
No matter what you're doing.
You can always
just breathe.